All right, Paul Finebaum has chimed in on Georgia, Texas. This is what is really more about Texas, Georgia than Texas, Matt. He says another loss for Georgia would be, quote, incalculable. I think you could calculate it, it'd just be one loss. He said to think about Georgia, a team that has owned college football, now being the underdogs. If they lose, they'll be in a fight for survival. Some of that's true, some of it's a little bit hyperbole.
Yeah, that's not really anything new, right? We've been talking all offseason. Hey, Georgia can lose two of these games. And we talked about the schedule for how long? I mean, it was going to be tough. They've got that early loss to Tuscaloosa. This was going to be the game where I think everyone said this will be Georgia's biggest test. They already have one loss. A second would keep them in the playoff picture, Ryan. But then it is basically lose or go home, and you're not getting into the playoffs. I think they're better than Ole Miss. I think they're better than Tennessee and Florida and Georgia Tech. I know they're better than UMass. I think they can beat Texas. I don't know if they're going to. I think they can absolutely go out there and do it. They've got to get the job done. But I do think that Georgia's the team with the most pressure in this game. Texas knows they can lose this game. Everything's okay. Probably their biggest test of the season, too. It's not a bad loss if they lose to Georgia. But, Georgia's at a point where they need to really win all these games. They can still lose this one, I think. But, yeah, you lose to Texas, you're starting to be in real big trouble.
I don't know that that's necessarily true, right? We haven't seen this 12-team playoff before. I don't think that we can positively say if Georgia has 3 losses, they're 100% out of the playoff. There's a lot of mediocre in college football this year. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of high-level play right now. I think we could see a few teams end up with 2 or 3 losses, and it becomes a question. Now, if Georgia loses and then they just look the rest of the season, kind of like they have in other moments, then that's different. But let's say it's a really close loss at Texas and then a really close loss at Ole Miss, and they blow out Tennessee and they just look great. I mean, those are scenarios that are really hard to – maybe he's right. It's uncalculable. Maybe he's actually right about saying that because there are so many different scenarios there. But I don't think that we can possibly say if Georgia loses this game, then it's win or go home the rest of the way. But it leans that way for sure.
Yeah, I actually am with Ryan on this, Matt. You can explain yourself further. What I think we don't know what the future holds here. I mean, does Tennessee beat Alabama and then Georgia beats Tennessee? I mean, like at the end of the day,
talking about, man.
Yeah, so this is still going to be very messy. We still have Alabama, LSU. I believe LSU is undefeated in league play. I'm certain they are actually. They have one loss. The win over Clemson is great, and it was a 30-point win and all that, but. There will be excuse making for people who don't want Georgia in about the Clemson game. They'll say, well, it was in Atlanta and it was the first game of the season and all this stuff. So it is really all 12 games. Here's my perspective on the Texas game. I think it's going to be a hard game for Georgia to win. I do not think this is a must-win game. I do not necessarily think the 5 games after that are must-win, but I think they should win. I mean, Georgia's better than Ole Miss. They're certainly better than Tennessee, it looks like to me. Georgia Tech, it sounds great. They played well against Florida State, barely won. That's a 1-5 Florida State team. I think the challenge right now, and the truth is, what I'm about to say is totally true. We don't know what we don't know right now. I mean, Ohio State's got lost. Georgia's got lost. Alabama's got lost. I mean, there's just so many carcasses on the floor already. We're halfway through the season. Texas has only played 2 league games, and one of them's against Oklahoma, Matt. So I think Paul said a lot there without saying very much. Now, I will throw it to you this way, Matt. The team that has owned college football is now the underdog. This has not happened since 2020. And everybody, I want to throw this to you, Matt. Everybody keeps talking about, well, Texas hasn't seen an offense like Georgia. Listen, man, Texas is really good. Don't start that shit. Texas is really good. They're a really good team. If Georgia wins this game, they will have earned it. If Texas wins this game, they will have earned it. These are 2 of the top probably 5 teams in the country. It's possible they're the top 2, although I don't know. I mean, I don't know about that, but they're top 5, top 6. And I'm going to get back to that point, Matt, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's similar in a way to Ohio State, Oregon. I don't think anyone thinks less of Ohio State because that lost that game. If Georgia loses a tight game that comes down to the very end, how can you continue to knock Georgia, right? That's just a really tough loss on the road to the number 1 team in the country. And they still have everything in front of them if they lose to Texas.
Right.
But at some point, they're going to need a little bit of help and a little bit of luck, and that's something they don't want.
From who, though?
If they lose a third game.
Oh, if they lose a third game.
Don't go. Yeah, they lose 2 and they're still right there, right? You lose a third, then you need help, maybe a lot of help. But again, I thought Tennessee was good. It doesn't look like they're good. We thought Alabama was a lot better than what they've looked. So we really don't know. LSU is playing better. They could have lost to Ole Miss at home. They didn't. They gutted it out. Missouri's not the team we thought that they were, and Ole Miss could lose 3, maybe 4 games if it doesn't work out in their favor. So there's still a lot of football left, but it would be a massive, massive win for Georgia to go over there and win this game. It is going to be tough, and I do think that Georgia's offense is going to be very challenging for Texas's defense because they haven't seen a quarterback like Carson Beck. That's just a fact.
That's the big knock right now, where I see from all these geniuses. Go ahead, but Matt. Is that
good. They're good, but look at the quarterback for Michigan, and the best quarterback they've seen was the kid at Mississippi State. So I do think Georgia will be able to score some points. I'm not saying they're going to be able to run the ball, but I think it wouldn't surprise me at all if Carson Beck has a really big game, because I think they're going to have to score with Texas, Ryan. I think Georgia's defense could continue to struggle in that secondary if changes aren't made, but I'm thinking this might be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, a lot of what you just said, Matt, is just different things that I've written and recorded this week. I just finished recording a video making the case for Georgia in this game, and it's true. Texas, I don't think they've been challenged, really. Michigan's had a quarterback change since they've played Texas, and even then it was pretty bad. You're on the road and all that, and that's great, but the Michigan team is not – people think about the national championship team. It's not at all the same as what it was. And then Oklahoma is a disaster on offense and not as good on defense as people say it is. So they haven't been challenged. There is that aspect. Just going back one more time to the 3-loss thing. Let's say they do have 3 losses and Texas is in the playoff and the Big 12 champion, the ACC champion, all that. Well, you're going to get one other ACC team, max.
We know we're going to get one ACC. We don't know we're going to get
one
2.
other Big 12 team max, probably. You're going to definitely get, I would say, 2 more Big 10 teams. So we're talking about outside of that, 3, 4, 5 teams. You've got the group of 5 teams they're going to compete with. There's a few open spots there that are just for the rest of college football. I think we're going to see multiple 3-loss teams in the college football playoff.
Let me touch on a couple of things, because I mean, I know sometimes these videos are 10 minutes and sometimes they're longer, and this one might be a smidge longer than the usual for us. But there are a couple of different things about what Ryan just said. If someone's played a more difficult schedule these first 7 games in Georgia, I'd like to know who it is. At Texas, at Alabama, you play Clemson. Just those 3 games, they're all ranked in the top 10 right now. Okay, we don't know if Georgia will go 2-1 or 1-2 in those games, but I have to say, if this were the NFL, which is going more to, there's no shame in losing on the road. All right. Secondly, I want to point out, and again, I think Texas is good. Statistically, clearly they are very good. So I don't want to hear this whole. I see people like kind of, and I know they're kind of talking idiots like we are, but like Texas is good, and they've had some choppiness because of quarterback starts that aren't that great. But let me just point this out. Texas has started with Colorado State, went up to Michigan and handled that. They should have, they did. Then they played USTA, which is tennis when I was growing up. And then Matt knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. And then Louisiana Monroe. And then they played State, who they struggled with, sort of like Georgia did. Week off, they really pounded Oklahoma, which is a good win. I think this is Texas's toughest 3-game stretch, guys, or just toughest stretch generally speaking. I thought it was going to be the end of the season. They play Oklahoma, rivalry game, just like Georgia had with Auburn. Then they play the Dawgs. Then they go to Vanderbilt, who probably will be ranked with 1 loss. Am I wrong? They beat Virginia Tech. They have 2 losses. Okay, but they probably still will be ranked, is my suspicion, is Vanderbilt at 5-2 with wins over Virginia Tech and Alabama and an overtime loss to Missouri and a win over Kentucky. I mean, they're probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're going to be 5-2-ish. Someone else can correct me. I'm doing the math very fast. That's going to be challenging for Texas. They should win the game, but this is going to be the hardest part of their season is this 3-game stretch, and this is what it's really like playing in the league. One other thing before I throw it to Matt. I think the beginning of the season for Texas, we visually they do look good. But we know Georgia visually has looked good sometimes and visually not. They've not looked so hot when they were playing Alabama on the road. They've not looked so hot when I guess, Kentucky on the road. And here they are going on the road again. This is going to be a challenging game for Georgia. Georgia folks need to realize, Georgia's the dog here. They're not supposed to win this game.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Texas is really good. They play collective defense. They have 7 interceptions by 7 different guys. They play team defense in every aspect. Even with the quarterbacks coming out, they're really good. They've got a strong run game. They stop the run. They've got playmakers on the outside. They may have the best tight end in college football. There's a lot to like. And playing over there, I mean, they've had this game circled. I don't care what any Texas fan says. I talked about this in the offseason. This is the game they have circled. It's not Oklahoma. It wasn't Michigan. They want to be ready for the Dogs. The Georgia Bulldogs are coming to town. I expect that place to be rocking. It is a big deal. I mean, it's still Georgia, and Texas knows that, and they want to dethrone Georgia. This is the first step to doing that. They probably need to win another national championship soon, but first step, beat the Dogs in your own house. Show the college football world that there is a changing of the guard, early on. Right? It's a long season. But I expect Texas to be ready for this game, as I have for a long time. I think it's circled, Ryan. They're going to come out ready to play.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dean. I don't think that some Georgia fans realize that Texas has been the better team this season, that they are a 3.5-point favorite for a reason. I mean, just to add on to some more numbers that Matt's talking about in favor of Texas, only allowed 3 touchdowns all season, right? There's a couple games where they haven't allowed a touchdown. Georgia allowed 4 touchdowns to Alabama in the first half, right? So there's a discrepancy there. Haven't allowed 300 total yards at all this season. I mean, it's been, and we lost Matt, but it's been
he'll be back.
Pretty. They've been stout on both sides of the football. They didn't really miss a beat with Arch Manning. That doesn't matter for this game because it's going to be Quinn Ewers, but he's right. I mean, they've got NFL guys at every spot. I mean, every single spot. Linebacker, defensive line, secondary, wide receiver, tight end, running back, quarterback. So this is, like Kirby said earlier this week, a little reminiscent of Georgia's championship teams from a couple of years ago where they're just not missing anything and they can beat you in a variety of ways. We saw them last week, right? The big thing all season was that their running backs aren't going to be that good because of they lost their top 2. Yeah. Right. And they've got 3 running backs with over 200 yards. Each of them have multiple scores. Some of them have receiving scores as well. And that's how they beat Oklahoma last week. It was by running the football effectively when Quinn Ewers is shaking off a little bit of rust and missing some guys. So they've showed that they can do it in a variety of ways. And that's the thing is this team is just not missing much.
No, but it will be challenging this is not a toss-up game. Texas should win this game. I mean, they're at home. They're a a 3-point favorite, 3.5-point favorite. This game, Texas should win. I said that about Alabama. I mean, I picked Georgia, but when you're the home team and it's a tight kind of coin flip situation, it makes a difference. Now, will it make a difference for Georgia as much now as it would have in game 1 on the road or game 2 on the road? I can't imagine it would matter as much as it would have in those situations because it was their first time on the road. So there's that. I think the biggest issue right now at Georgia is the offense can score. And they probably can score on Texas, I guess. We'll see. But the winner of this game is going to have to get to 30 points is my guess, Matt. I don't think either of the – we can talk about how Georgia's defense is, quote, not good. That's all relative, though, now. They've been pretty good at parts in this season. I suspect the winner of this game, this is going to be somewhere around 30-31, 34-31, something like that feels like where this is going to go. I think Georgia can score with them. I just don't know if they will win the game. That's my question.
Yeah, I think 31, 34-ish, something like that. I expect both teams to get into the 30s. Can a team make a stop at the very end, or someone who's going to make the plays? I think it's going to be very tight down the stretch, very similar to Alabama. Who can win those final drives? Which players can make those plays, Ryan? At the end of the day, who executes in crunch time? I think it could be a heavyweight fight. Big touchdown here, big play here. Turnovers are going to be key. But who can play the best midway through the fourth quarter and towards the end of the game to come out on top? And that's what I expect the game to be. Close, all the way till the end. Whoever makes those final plays is going to win the game.
Yeah, it's going to come down to coaching. It's going to come down to those adjustments, and you got two of the best in the business with this. For Kirby and for Georgia's sake, because of what's been the theme, is that just can't come too late into the game, especially if they're down. And that's what you saw against Alabama. It's what you've seen in games that they've won, like the Ohio State game. It just can't come too late where Georgia controls the game and Georgia has momentum if it's going to win, especially with this being on the road against a team that's probably better than Georgia. So I think it will come down to that.
All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.